evening there, Lorain City and Lorain County. Hey, Aaron Knapp here. How's it going tonight, guys? Little new format. I got a new mic. Really just wanted to test it out because everybody complaining that the old mic wasn't working right. And it's been suggested to me that I should start a podcast as opposed to just going live. And so here we are today. So, feel free to chime in tonight. Also, feel free to let me know how I sound. I don't know that I really have an agenda tonight, Aaron. I know you were asking earlier about that, whether or not you're in or not. I don't know. I'm kind of just gonna go over things as I see them. Maybe do a little intro on me and who I am and how I got here and whatnot. For those that might ask, and I feel like I'm gonna touch a little bit on. So I watched Madhouse's podcast tonight. Good job, guys. Like I always like to watch that, and I noticed that they were talking a lot about. The Sixth Ward. I don't know a lot about the Sixth Ward. I like the Sixth Ward. And so, thank you. And so I sit here and I go, all right, we've got things going on that we feel like might be an issue for us in the Sixth Ward that we've been seeing lately. And I noticed there were a lot of people at the city council meeting. I'm gonna mess with this mic a little bit, guys, just as we talk. I noticed there were a lot of people at the city council meeting the other night. That was great. Like, I love to see that. I love to see the participation that we had going on there. Jane, you did a great job. I felt your emotion. I felt your passion. That's what we need, people. We need you guys to come out to these meetings. We need you to be the voice. You need to speak to the government. Now, I've done lives on that whole scenario. I don't really want to delve too much into that tonight. I just want to say this. A lot of you have come in and we've bantered back and forth on whether or not speaking in the city council is constitutionally protected speech. Now, I would say it's hard. That's a hard question to answer. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people. You can go back even as far as, like, I believe it was during Obama's time. He tried to pass or did pass a law. It was like SB 59 or 56. And it basically made anywhere that the president is like it's the White House. And therefore you could restrict protesting and free speech. And they could basically pick you up. The Secret Service could pick you up for anything. It's clearly lined out that we have the right to freedom of speech, but we also have, limited public forums. And this is where a lot of these Facebook arguments come in too. Like, my forum is not a limited public forum. My forum is private if I want it to be. My forum on my political page, since I'm not in office, is private if I want it to be. I can block you from that. I can block you from anything I want as a private citizen. When we talk about the First Amendment, a lot of people like to say, well, the First Amendment gives me the right to say what I want. Well, okay. Let's dissect that thought for a minute. The First Amendment gives you the right to freedom of speech. But just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean it's the right thing to say. I'm just as guilty of that as anyone. On top of that, you have to think about this. All right, so, sorry, it's getting a little warm in here. You have to think about the fact that just because you have freedom of speech doesn't mean that you have, that someone has to listen to you. The only people that have to listen to you is the government. So at some point, maybe even me, if I become the government. But when I'm addressing, say, any member of my city government, any member of my county government, when I'm addressing them, yes, I can say these things to you. And it's crappy. I'll admit it. I've said some pretty mean things to some of these elected officials as elected officials. But when I see you in public, I don't do that. Go talk to Mayor Bradley. Ask him if I've ever said an unkind word to him in public. Where we discuss within emails and within these forums, these are these political arenas where we're doing these discussions. It doesn't mean that we need to bash people when we see them in public. Like, it doesn't mean we need to come at somebody when they're in the grocery store. So again, these are the facts. You can look at that however you want, but just because you have the right to say someone also has the right to not listen. Unless they're the government. So when we start talking about that, we start talking about the TIA situation. I look at that and I just say, hey, if there are current laws in place, the best way to fight a situation like that is to get arrested and then fight it out in court. I know somebody else who's doing that right now. In the end, if Mr. Petty wins this case, we've got case law. Why? I like my shirt. Oh, wait. Oh, to show it. I see. Okay. That's what you want to see. All right. But you know what I mean? Like, see, can't you distract me like that? The bottom line is that when we're looking at that scenario, there are laws in place, right? So there's the Lorain City ordinance. There's the state Ohio State ordinance, right? The ORC, the Ohio Revised Code. So we have clear ordinances saying what that is. Then we look at the report that I posted on my site that James put out that was done by Deputy Chief Fowling. And it pretty much just says that based on some new rule that they made after Garen's incident, well, actually, it looks like they made it in August or something. Based on what happened after that, they made a new rule that said that council had the right to shut the meeting down. Well, they always had that right. Just because you made a rule doesn't change anything. And in the grand scheme of things, just because you have a rule, council rule this, council rule that, that doesn't apply to we the people, right? So under we the people, your rules don't apply to us. First Amendment trumps that. But when you look at time and place restrictions and you look at all the other things that go along with that, you say, well, but the Ohio Revised Code and the local ordinances in regards to disrupting a lawful meeting they don't trump your right to freedom of speech. You still have the right to say that. You also have the right to get arrested. You know what I mean? Like, one right doesn't mean that it alleviates you from your responsibility. I have the right to freedom of speech. I don't have the right to yell bomb in a building or fire. I don't have the right to cause panic. I don't have the right to use hate speech at people, which honestly, I argue on that one because First Amendment, now better to know who the hateful ones are. But anyway, so as long as we have an ORC and we have a city ordinance that prohibit that, I feel like they should have been justified in at minimum bringing this in front of a judge, as they did with Mr. Petty. And so basically, they did this with Mr. Petty, and now they're doing it. They didn't do it with her. So again, if you're gonna do it with Garen, you got to do it with Tia. That's all I've been saying. I'm not really keen on you doing it to either of them. Honestly, I feel like you should just stop the meeting like they said and push them on out. And say, all right, we're going to continue once we get them out of here. We're going to continue once we're able to control this. Now, the police are going to be back. And I know there's been a lot of things bandied around about that. Like, why weren't they there that night? Why of all the nights weren't they there that night? Why were they conspicuously absent on the night the news cameras showed up and the night that there was all these problems? And everybody will run and say that this, that she didn't get out of her seat, or she did this, or she did that. But in the grand scheme of it all, it doesn't really matter because the rules say if you had intent to disrupt the meeting, what else could her intent have been? I mean, look, I don't even care what she yelled at me. Someone else posted it in there. I totally forgot. She called me, she said, nobody wants your crazy, I don't know what studios things are here. So ASS on this stage and in the office and some other not so choice things about me, which again, I don't care. Like inside, like I was in the military. I mean, honestly, nothing they have to say negative about me is ever really going to bother me. It really just doesn't. And so we're not going to go down that route. all I can say in the grand scheme of all of this is that I feel like we need to really readdress everything that goes on in city council. I believe we need a master at arms, somebody that, can enforce the rules of council maybe. But the bottom line on all of this is that I don't necessarily want to see Tia charged. I want to see Garen not charged. But the problem is they've already gone past the point of no return with him for them. So they're not going to back down because they know they have to pay money if they back down. But that's all we do in Lorain is bleed money in this city. I see it consistently, constantly, bleeding money all the time. And so what are we going to do, folks? How are we going to fix this? Are we going to vote new people in? Are we going to continue down the same path that we've been on? Or are we going to do something new? So, if you look in this podcast form, I posted, 8 months ago or whatever, the original statement of me talking about what happened with me and James. And I've had some comments lately in the post, you really hate him. Why don't you admit that? I don't hate James McCann, for the record. I don't hate him. I'm disappointed in him. That's it. Like, I get it. You've been used to just doing what you want, running ramshot over these people, using your weight as police chief on people, and they've just caved. I mean, I get it. But you man, like there was no need for you to do what you did, and you know it and I know it, and all you have to do is apologize. You don't gotta, like for instance, like say, what if my kid had said something at school and then in my corrective action, somebody heard something that didn't happen and then they called you and then you guys decided to do a little invest. And then after you realize nothing happened and you talk to the school and they're like, no, nothing happened. You call me to say, hey, we're not going to put this in a report. And I ran this by the chief, and he doesn't think we should do it either. Thanks. Look, part of the history lesson on all this will be to explain all of that. Like my history with my daughter and the things that go on there. But if I'm supposed to believe that call the other day was we're doing you a solid, and maybe it was. Maybe it was him doing me a solid because I did do him a solid. I mean, if I hated Mr. McCann, I would have never reported that his social security number had been released to me, and I would have just given it out to everyone. That's what a hateful person does. And so I just don't feel like that works. So I'm not going to do that. And I wouldn't do that, not to somebody. And so I said, no, we're not going to do that. So maybe that's what it was. But either way, it is what it is, right? Like, I just closed out my Facebook because I feel like this is running slow. So, in case you're trying to message me, I won't be on there. You can message me here in the chat. But I don't hate James. I don't hate Lorain Police. I dislike a lot of the things that they're doing. And I dislike that they've ended up in the news a lot lately. So let's transition that thought, here in a minute into the Mercy Health story that we're going to get to. But so in the grand scheme of things, you have this scenario with Tia that everybody's up in arms about, and it's caused quite the division in the local political groups, the other ones that are so, like that group's so bothered that I get their posts, but I leave my posts open for people to see. And as much as we may talk about certain people, being blocked, like, yeah, I get it. Look, I knew blocking them was going to piss them off, and that's why I did it. They can still come see all this stuff. Oh, excuse me. Obviously, people are still sharing it. Like, it's getting shared to them. They're replaying it on their pages. I know you're going to see it. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not stupid. I understand how computers work. You're going to get it if you really want to get it. I'm not hiding it from anyone by putting it online. Once it's out here, right? Like, there's no taking it back. There's no takes backsies. And so that's where we end up with all this, right? We end up in a scenario where we're doing this time and time and time and time again. And so I get it. I have no issue. I wrote what I wrote. I've said what I've said. I put it out there for everyone to see. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm okay with what I write, what I say, what I do. For those that, will come at me and have recently said, well, it's your approach. Well, I've changed my approach now. But in the beginning, the approach needed to be what the approach needed to be, right? Like, nobody was listening when it was just me emailing James, hey, like, I'm a social work student and your police were mean to me. Yeah, they didn't listen to me. Okay, Aaron, we got you. Then suddenly this Hildreth incident happened and I was all up in that. And I was persona non grata. I mean, that's where we go all the way back to, is the persona non grata with the Hildreth incident. But anyway, I did tell you guys I was going to give you a little history lesson. So here it is. I'm not big on sharing. I'm not big on taking a bunch of photos with people. I'm not big on doing a bunch of that. I'm not big on a lot of things when it comes to that. I'll give you a little history lesson. I'm not sure really if I should be sharing this on a live video at this point, but I guess if they come find me, they come find me. So when I joke around and say I have ties and connections to people, it's not that I'm like well connected or anything like that. It's that I left California for a reason. I was a witness in a capital crime, and now a bunch of those people are serving some very long sentences in some very big penitentiaries in California. So I left and moved to Idaho and decided it was time to stop being a DJ and get a new job. And so I did. I went back to school, got my AA at the College of Southern Idaho, and then I moved up here to Ohio to go to Ohio State, got accepted, and got my bachelor's degree in social work and my drug and alcohol license, my minor in drug and alcohol counseling. I found as I went back to school, I was in the military. I don't, I do talk about that. But the military, I'm 80% service connected. They paid for me to go back to school. So they paid for all of this to happen. They paid for my license. So I get it all. I get my license at, here in Columbus, or, took the test, passed the social work exam, passed the exam for getting my license for my CDCA, and then I got them both. And I went to work. Now, my first stop was juvenile justice. I was working for the courts. Typically speaking, when you grab a therapist, social worker, whatever, right out of school, like, our first jobs are usually going to be a little whatever. But this was a pretty good gig. I had great vacation. I was working for Applewood Centers. I was working with kids in the community that I loved. And yeah, I get it. They had committed some crimes. They had done some stuff wrong. But they're juveniles. They're delinquents. They're not criminals. And so if they were in that program, it's sponsored by Judge Glass and Judge Janik. And I got my first dose of county. Well, during that time, I'd done some advocating before that with James, but James and I were going back and forth in emails, sparring over a lot of different things. Now, for a little background, I think James is an a-hole. I think I'm an a-hole. And I thought we were doing the a-hole thing, right? Like, we were going back and forth. Somewhere in that, while working for this place, James took it to the next level. He got mad because I'm pretty sure I can trace it back to when I called him out for using his Coast Guard logo on his police email. He wrote, whatever Coast Guard motto is at the bottom of it in Latin. And I was like, really? You haven't been in that for a while. It'd be like if I was, yeah, I get it. I got, my diploma or my honorable discharge up there on the wall, whatever, like right there. But I'm not still signing my emails, with my unit crest, which is around here somewhere, in Latin. And so, Yeah, I was a little snarky, and I said insert pretentious Latin statement here at the bottom of my email. And in hindsight, I talked to my boss about it, and she was like, "Look, I read everything you wrote, everything until you got right there." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. Right there is where Aaron got human." So we had a discussion about that. And somewhere around that time, she said, "God help the person you ever turn that brain of yours against." And we were talking about, the fact that rumors had been floating around. And that's when the initial incident occurred where I thought James had called my boss or someone from the police department had. Now, I don't know what happened to this day. I just know that there was some conversation revolving around it. It may or may not have just floated up the chain to my boss. But my boss got a hold of it and said, "Well, they can't stop you from doing it. And they could actually refuse to work with you." So I said, "All right." And that's when George Patton was born. So that's why you still see him on that name on this page, and a link to that page is George Patton. I was in the army. I was a tanker. I love my tanks back here, and so George Patton's my pseudo hero. Like it's George Patton, man. Like, so I thought, well, like we'll be George Patton. And so then I started doing that, and then everyone was like, "Well, why would you use a fake name?" Well, because I got told to by my boss, and I got told that if I wanted to continue my advocacy work, I couldn't do it as Aaron Knapp. So Aaron Knapp, the online guy, died. I deleted that profile and I went on about my day. Um, that being said, I kept doing this George Patton guy, and everyone kept calling me a coward. I don't like that very much because I'm not a coward. I think if anything, I'm the exact opposite of a coward. I always I'm like a bull, right? Like I run towards red. If it's a red flag, I'm running towards it. And that's in everything in my life, from women to political advocacy to everything I do. I charge into everything full force, both horns, every time. So I started digging because, again, it ended up going to, he wrote a letter to my board. And they I still argue because I'm really smart about this stuff that when he sent the email, most likely from a city server, that they are required to send the email he sent to me. The board is not required to give me the complaint, but since he sent it from a city email address, I should be able to get it. But it doesn't really matter because in the grand scheme of things, I saw what it said, or I knew what it said because they asked me a set of questions. But again, I've repeated this before. I'll repeat it again. When they called the investigator, she says, "Hey, is this Aaron Knapp?" "Yeah, you got me. It's the Napster." Kind of what I said to Garen when he met me. He's like, "Is this Aaron Knapp?" "You got the Napster. You found him." Um, she goes, "This is, XYZ from the Board of Social Workers." Now, mind you, I'm in my first year of being a social worker. I was like, wow, okay. And in social worker school, they teach you about this thing. Like they say, well, your license or your work. And they always say, choose your license over your work because if you lose your license, your work will let you go no matter what. All right, cool. So they said to me, they started asking these questions that made sense. Like, first thing they asked was, what did you do? And it's like, we were just all curious down here at the board. What did you do to not only make a chief of police figure out we had a board, look us up, and then go through the trouble to write a complaint out about you? It's like, well, you should call my mom first if you want to know how I managed to do that. That being said, because I'm me. Like, he got mad about that letter, that email, and then one day I made a complaint in regards to the Hildreth stuff. I know I bounced around a little. Sorry, it's ADHD. The Hildreth stuff is what set all that off. So I made the complaint, and at the bottom of it, I said I said as an officer of the court. Now that word's really important because if you define it, and if you look it up in the law books, officer of the court versus court officer. Court officer is someone that works for the court, like a bailiff, a judge. An officer of the court is someone that either works in the court, within the court, or understands the court enough that they're held responsible to the court rules and thereby are responsible to advise the court and others when they see something that they know is blatantly against the rules. Well, I had just become a guardian ad litem. I've shown people the certificate. I know Aiden likes to run around and say that I lost that job. I did and I didn't. But I became a guardian ad litem, and I'm not going to go through the whole story because I've done it a bunch of times, but the long and short of that was on the website of the guardian ad litem's website, it says officers of the court. So it says once they're sworn in, they were officers of the court. By the judges, they were officers of the court. And so in my statement, I said I was a sworn, duly licensed officer of the court. Well, sworn, meaning I was sworn in by the judges. Officer of the court, the website said that. Duly licensed. Well, I am duly licensed, but I'm licensed as a social worker, LSW. So they tried to twist my words into saying basically I represented myself as someone other than I was. Then I get this message from them, and they're like, "But aren't you a licensed social worker?" Yes. So you have the right to sign your name LSW, right? Yes. Because prior to that, I just wrote BSSW. Because that's all I had was my bachelor's of science in social work. I said, okay. And the officer of the court said, guardian ad litem. And I sent him a picture of the of the copy of the court's website that said that guardian ad litems were officers of the court. Now, mind you, I reported that I was a guardian ad litem to my boss, to Applewood, to the courts, to everyone. They all knew. They all knew that I had this role. And so one of the things we do at the courts is we would help the kids write these letters to their victims. We had to sit down and we had to work with the young men, the ones that were working with, the different organizations, Men of Courage and Renounce, Denounce. And we would help them write victim letters to their victims, apologizing and thereby helping the juvenile understand the ramifications of their actions that caused this delinquent action to occur that caused harm to someone. No, the thing is that stuff is part of a juvenile record that's typically not just released to the public. And so when Lorain police got into that tiff with the Hildreths, the first thing I did was I was online as a First Amendment advocate, seeing them block off comments. Like they shut down complete and other sections of their Facebook page that I was commenting on about this. That led to my initial interactions on this topic with James, where he went on to say, how I and other citizens of Lorain had just jumped to conclusions and done all this stuff, which I hadn't. I was just commenting, again, working our way through this. So we shut down the page, commenting, which I said was against the First Amendment. So we started fighting about that. And then he comes out on the other end and he makes this investigative report. Well, this is after they've gotten slaughtered in the national media, right? Like, they've been slaughtered a few times, but they got slaughtered in the national media over this Hildreth thing. And so he was like, nope, I'm out. And so he came out with his little report, and he put all this stuff about the Hildreths out there, including their kids' information, photographs, and videos, and this kid's attendance records, and all the stuff that was FERPA protected, as well as this document from the courts, this victim letter that had Judge Glass's name written on it, right? Or not, maybe Glass, or maybe it was Swinsky or somebody. All I know is one of our judges' names was on it, and there was some commentary in regards to the judges being too lax. And so I'm an officer of the court. I reported it. Everyone at the court that I talked to, I went to one of the female prosecutors in the juvenile division at the time. I went to the court clerks, although I think they were a little unaware that records were supposed to be kept private. But every attorney, every gal, every person I talked to was like, no, that shouldn't be online. So I double checked my facts at the court. And again, I can't let stuff go. It's just in my DNA. So I was like, hey, as an officer of the court, I need you to take that down. And also, as a licensed social worker, I see you got FERPA protected documents up there. So what happened was in the grand jury summons, they were able to, by law, get copies of all of the evidence, including the FERPA protected documents, photographs, everything. Lorain police had every right to have that, every right to use it in their investigation, every right to use it to charge the kids, to charge the mom, whatever they may do, because they got it legally. What they didn't have the legal right to do was share it with everyone else. So once they gave it to us and me and you and God and everyone, they made us all part of their crime. They shared it with all of us. And so now I've shared it because it's just everywhere. And been trying to tell them, you've got to take this down. He's now an adult. Like, he could ask for it to be done. And if you're ever watching this, you should, Mr. Hildreth. And for the mom and the dad, like, call that attorney I told you about. Like, I truly feel that you guys have something here. And so they got mad about all of that. And between the First Amendment stuff and then me advocating with the courts that this had to come down, James sent a bunch of text messages to Tim Weitzel that pretty much sunk me. And I have those. I posted them on my page numerous times. We're not going to go back over that because that's been addressed. But he sinks me out of the courts, but Apple would put me on leave, right? Because they wanted to see what the social work board was going to say. Well, the social work board comes back and says, you're ethical. You acted right. You did the right thing. Because, I mean, I'm a brand new social worker. I sat down. I wrote that thing out, 86 pages. Like, I was like, this is what we trained for. Fresh out of Ohio State. Like, fresh out of writing papers. I had that thing written in a night. I sent it to everybody, including my boss. And she was in it, so everyone was just like, eee. But, yeah. And at the end of it all, even when I was leaving the office, she was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, don't be. We knew this was a possibility. Like, from the get-go, I knew that I might get terminated. I'd been watching a podcast that had said, it takes good people to do, risk their careers sometimes to make long-lasting change. And when you talk about social workers, like, I feel like we're martyrs anyway. So you can give a brand new social worker a chance to martyr himself at his first job and a chance to exercise the ultimate field problem, as we called them in the military. So you gave me a field problem in social work school. They said, do you side with your company or do you side with your agency or do you side with your license and your beliefs? So I went with the last one, license and beliefs. And guess who got another job? This guy. Because that's all that matters, is what the social work licensing board of the state thought, and then again what the unemployment board thought. So the social work board comes back and says, hey, you acted ethically. Applewood comes back and says, we're going to offer you $1,500, like 2 weeks salary or whatever, for the time that you've been out. It was a month or whatever, but that you didn't use vacation to sit out on, if you'll sign this NDA. And I was like, I would rather be broke than sign an NDA because I'm going to talk about this till the day I die. Just like I'll talk about this stuff with James. Like, I don't care if you guys think like I hate him or if I'm incessant. You're right, I am incessant and I'm never going to stop. Like, when I make you a promise, I'm going to keep it. And so we ended up going down that path. And in the grand scheme of things, I won in all the arenas that it counted in. And he literally shared all of my information, my kids' information, over unsecured emails to a guy who was another social worker, a master level clinician, Tim Weitzel, at the Lorain County Jail, juvenile detention home. Sorry, that's what he's over. I think he's over everything that has to do with that program. And he's a master clinician. He should have taken me under his wing, and instead he threw me under the bus. So then I started asking for all the records, and they didn't want to give them, and James said they didn't exist, so he lied in public records request, just straight lied, said they didn't exist, and then I got them from the courts. So now I have all these records and all this stuff against these people and the courts where I did what they told me to do. I reported stuff the way I was told to report it. I saw illegal documents online that are still online, and no one's done anything. Yes, I've continued. Yes, I most recently videotaped Graham, and he admitted that those were FERPA documents. But again, they go back to, well, but the police released them and they're not FERPA bound. You're correct. They're not. You are, and they're your covered entity. Just like in social work school, if I gave something to the probation officers and they shared it, who do you think got in trouble? Them or me? Little hint, it was me. So again, there we go. So Aaron's here. Aaron went to OSU. Aaron met a lot of nice people in the government while he was there. They all asked me why I was coming here, because at the time I had a girlfriend here. Loved her dearly, still kind of do a little, and it just didn't work out. All because of child, mainly. I mean, there was, obviously adult issues there too, but my daughter's a handful. And that's part of, that process that got me here. Within all of this, that was another thing James did, was he did some research on me in Idaho. And there's a reason you don't find a whole lot in California, because, when you're a witness to a capital case, they, whatever. But the Idaho stuff you found was about my custody battle, and you tried to make it sound like I had been arrested or done all these things, and I hadn't. Yeah, I had this vexatious litigant thing that they tried to use, but I beat that. I was the only person in the history of Idaho to beat it and be taken off this list that they automatically put you on. So there was that. Then I fought my daughter's custody case per se in that state, Utah, and this state. When I finally won, after having even Lorain get involved, Lorain courts, domestic courts, finally win all this stuff and get it moved to Utah. And within 1 week of it being in Utah, I have full custody of this child. Now, she's had some issues. So I'm not going to go into her issues here in this live podcast, but I'm just going to say they're the usual ACEs scores issues that children of split homes come to when their parents maybe remarry or they move, or a mom or a dad maybe has some issues. And let's just say my daughter didn't have the best of life while she was with her mom, and now she lives with me. And so we're still dealing with the ramifications of that. And so she sometimes draws and says things that will make people go, what? And so I have to deal with that in very specific ways. And recently, again, someone misquoted something I said. It ended up back into their ears up at the LPD, and I'm getting this random call. I still don't think they should have called me. Like, I feel like that was a bad idea. Like, if you didn't find anything and you're not writing a report, why are you giving me a courtesy call that you're not going to do anything? Other than, well, we could have. And as I've said, my daughter, she has her issues. And so if you believe that I said what I said, and you're just saying, well, we don't want to put it in a report. Well, there's so much worse about me in reports with my daughter that during this custody battle, because her mother put a lot of bad stuff in there. Now, me and her mom are on good terms now. We're on speaking terms. Her mom, got help for all of her mental health issues that she was struggling with, and is now on a very good path. My daughter, still does struggle, but we work on it together as parents. But to be clear, I did not say anything of the sort that you guys may or may not have insinuated I said. And if you did write it in a report, you know that I would fight it. But I wouldn't be ashamed of it, because as a parent, we do what we do to make sure our kids are taken care of. And one of the things a lot of the people are talking about is, we have no parental involvement. I'm very involved in my daughter's school. I'm very involved in her activities. I still, I love Miss Jackson and Miss Morgan down there at Southview Middle. They've done great work with Clarity. But there's a lot of underlying issues that I have to deal with, and I'll continue to have to deal with. And she will too. Just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean it's hunky-dory perfect world in Aaron's house. Like, I have just the same amount of issues as normal people do. So yeah. But anyway, that's kind of where my background comes. Now here we are. I was trying to join these political pages in Lorain. I didn't know any of these people. I finished school. I get here. I'm aware when I get here what's going on. I've been briefed. before I get here by the powers that let me rephrase that. I understand what's going on here from maybe people that I had once associated with in Columbus. And so I came here knowledgeable. I settled in to do my job, and it didn't take long for a fishy to bite. And then they terminate me from the first job, and then I move out of the area, and then I start these political pages. It's very difficult to continue to be the guy that is the guy when they fish you out and you can never really go back to county service. But don't think that report didn't make it up the chain, and don't think that, again, I support the people I support for the reasons I support them for, and you just need to understand that change is coming, and you guys are breaking a lot of ORCs when you do these things, and people notice. A lot of people notice. So anyway, that brings us to now. I'm running for office for a reason, and it's because everyone said, well, when you run for office, like, why don't you run for office? If you think that you could do better or change things, I'll try. Further into this, we'll get into some of that too. Like, I've had some reach outs from some people and some things I would like to champion and whatnot. But we all know I've been, mainly it's been the streets. And so I've really been fighting and addressing the streets. But here we are. I'm doing this run one way or the other. And on the other side of this, I can still do these. I can still do the pages if I don't win. If I do, we could probably still do these podcasts in a different format as a political, forum, and allow people to call in or write in to ask questions. I don't know that I could continue doing the two politic forums. Like, I could leave the George Patton profile auto running and approving people, but I don't know that I would be the same advocate that I once was. I'm actually hoping that the likes of the Vermilion, Daily and the Lorain Daily are going to start filling in those gaps. Those guys over there, Joseph and his brother, they're putting a lot of information out there for you guys. And I strongly suggest you check out their site, their pages, their Patreon. Throw them $5. Like, they're writing the stories that I would write, and don't have time to write anymore because I'm running for office. So check them out, Vermilion Daily News and the Lorain Daily. They've been posting a lot of stories lately, asking a lot of questions that concern the residents of Lorain. And they're good questions that they're asking. They're the only one that's fully covered the question on Antonio, which we will get to. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here and why I'm here. Do me a favor, and if you could keep the whole California thing a little low, just because, I'd rather not disappear. But I think it's been 15 years now, so I don't know, whatever. But anyway, here we sit in Lorain, Ohio. Aaron's here. I've got my, I cycled through those first 2 county jobs, and now I just do private practice. I work for myself because I realized that as much as I wanted to be involved in those scenarios and situations and help these people out, they didn't want to follow their own rules. And if I stayed working in Lorain, it wouldn't be long before they came for me. And that's been proven. Like, you look around what's been happening to people. So I started up those 2 pages, and they slowly started. Now one's up to 7 something, the other one 5, 6 something. I start getting weird things in the mail, Hold on, it's like, some of this stuff that I'm gonna drop off when I go meet with people next week. I got this postage envelope with my name on it, and just my address, sent from Lorain, and it contains all this evidence, to whom it may concern. It's got, hours, police officers. It's got a lot of names in here that, all you guys would recognize. I mean, I've talked about it before, when we go through these things, when we say, these are all timesheets for one James McCann run by Karen Shaver on February 28th of 2023 at 4 o'clock. 5 days from now, a year, 2 years ago. I mean, if you guys really want to know, it's all in here. Regular hours. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I worked Monday through Friday, regular hours, 8 hours. So these are all just the pays. But basically what this says is, according to what's in the documents, they're saying that when you look at some of these things like 12/4/2020, Friday, higher position, minus time plus half, 5 hours, all this stuff is laid out by someone who was obviously in the government, was an officer. I don't know, maybe this is from the shopper that ran it. I don't know. I don't know all these people. That's the one thing you guys all forget. Everyone comes at me and thinks, well, who do you know? Where are you from? I'm from Columbus now, as far as you're concerned. I graduated from the College of Southern Idaho in 2018. I graduated from OSU in 2022. There's a reason why, you guys didn't see me, because it wasn't here yet. That was an interesting one. This one was sent to me recently. Another one with no return address. Typed out. I would show you my email inbox, but I don't snitch on my sources. But, again, if you guys believe in any way, shape, or form that any of this stuff was just me, that I've just magically looked this stuff up and I had come on. Obviously, I have help. And lots of it. That's what should scare you the most. Is the people that, are helping me are the very people that you claim to want to help too. You get mad at me and you say our city workers deserve this, they deserve that, right? Who do you think's giving me this information? Do you think in your heart of hearts that Aaron Knapp somehow is so magical that I have access to all of everything, right? I have all this free time. I'm somehow got 16 profiles. I'm on every political page in town. I'm in the government. I'm in the schools. I'm in the county. I'm in the city. I'm at all these places all at once and at work. I'm still trying to raise my unruly child. Think about that. Everyone after Miguel Baez quit, and I started I had been advocating for him before he retired, because again, if you think it was Miguel, whoever came to me about this, you're wrong. Said it 1,000 times. I'll go dig it up. I made a records request on Miguel when he was at the pool after it opened, thinking he was down there spying on me, because a cop showing up and then texting, because just prior to that, some random officer had messaged James McCann about a very innocuous incident between me and an officer about a non-existent call that I had called off about a dog. And he just wrote at the bottom, I feel the need to share. Why? Why would you feel the need to share a non-call that you didn't write a report on with the chief of police about an interaction with a neighbor or a citizen who just said, I just don't want to be that guy. The guy came and got his dog. So I had every reason to believe that. And then Miguel, I see him there at the school and he's texting. Of course, like all people, I think it's about me, and I know it wasn't. But in the moment, in public, I felt a little vulnerable. So I messaged, never got an answer to that, never got a copy of his text. And then several months later, this stuff happens with the schools, and I start getting messages from people that are within the schools, people that care about him. And here we are. Once again, I'm advocating for somebody, and they're like, yeah, we knew you were feeding him information all along. No, he wasn't. I never spoke to this man. We finally exchanged a couple of messages after he retired. While he was a law enforcement officer, that man never spoke to me. He's true to his word. So, same thing with Middlebrooks. I still haven't talked to Middlebrooks to this day. I just know about what's going on. Because, again, if you think that it's just me, it's not. People are just tired of this. The police are tired of this. The officers are tired of this. They're all tired of one thing. One person. One person is the cause of all of this. JM, baby. The highest paid state official I know of. So, again, you got a problem in Lorain police, and the problem starts at the top, and you need to start there if you want to work your way down. And if saying this kind of stuff gets you to renew your police report in regards to what happened with my kid, so be it. Like, I don't care what my name is in. What I care is if I'm convicted or not. So again, just because my name is in a police report doesn't make it a conviction, as you know, Aiden would say. And so it just boils down to innocent until proven guilty, folks. And the days of the bully pulpit in Lorain need to be gone. The days when one person holds power and sway over others needs to be gone. If you guys can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. So, anyway, that's my history. That's what we're looking at right now. Some of the stuff that's floated across my desk recently that I'd like to bring up today that I'll be discussing more of is, one, I'm going to be working on a project with a group of people who've been trying to bring a group home to Lorain. They're going to be in the 5th Ward, so I want to reach out to possibly the current 5th Ward council person, as well as the one running for office, have some discussions with them. But this group home has run into some snags, and they're typical Lorain snags when it comes to how things get done, right? You've got building permit issues, and it's within this amount of feet of this and this amount of feet of this. And, we need more of these facilities for our kids, folks. So I'm going to be advocating for them. I've been getting some emails in regards to that, and I'm going to be putting together a proposal that they can send on up the chain. But I guess right now it's stuck in limbo at the Lorain City office, the building permit office. I think it would behoove all of us to let them know that we want these services for our kids, and to let them have their 8 instead of just stifling over 5. Give them their building permit while they sit out there, and let them get to work helping our kids. We're going to work on that. But anyway, I also wanted to talk about, look, I'm only going to address this once. I took down all of the posts in regards to somebody on vacation, and I did so with intent. Put them up with intent. They've done what they needed to do. They've created the desired separation between me and him. Secondly, they've called into question some behaviors that I didn't like. And they keep posting things about him, and it's being sent to me. So I'm going to be clear. I blocked all of them. I have. And I've done this I would never do this on my political page, but on my personal pages for a reason. And I did it because, I always told Aiden I would never block him. But in the end, I did it because he was really going deep, dark stuff. And I can't match that energy. I can tease and play and make jokes, but I'm not going to match that kind of homophobic energy. I'm not going to match Tia's homophobic energy. I'm not going to steal anyone's husbands. I'm not, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm not, a homosexual. But I don't care if you are. I grew up in Cali. Like, I think everyone should be and do who and what they want to be and do. I believe that everyone has a right to a happy, existence. They have the right to prosper. They have the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. So that being said, randomly calling me something like that and using it as an insult just sounds like bigotry to me, and I won't have anything to do with it. And those three people also were on, they've started this page, the Sixth Ward Council Uncensored. Aiden started it because he was mad that I blocked him from my page that he was using to like come at me on. And so now he's posting, really rude stuff over there on that page. I'm not going to go join that. Why would I? He's using my likeness on it to promote it. I'm definitely not going to be a party to that kind of behavior. And so if I go in there and talk to those people, I know what my response is going to be, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not debasing myself. So you guys can continue to make your posts. I got the most recent one where they misspelled my name, Aryon or whatever, Will Aaron, and it's from the Lunch Bunch page, which means it's from from number 4, who I blocked. That would be Rebecca Hung, and I blocked her because she continues to antagonize me. And they said, something to the effect of, yes, we support Jack and whatnot. And I'm just like, okay, you support Jack, good for you. Like the Lunch Bunch really wants like their 2 cents. They really want to be somebody. I get you support them, but you also posted like pictures in front of places that were supporting other candidates as well. And so, but cool. I'm glad you support him. I didn't say you didn't. I said some didn't, and those, if the shoes fit, then you should wear them. My big issue was never about you supporting him or not supporting him. It was that before you guys even got out of the airport, you were dioramically posting this stuff. Miss Hung was posting this stuff, Rebecca, online, and it was being posted in the Sheffield Lake forums, the public forums. Why would you share all of your vacation photos and then post the sheriff all over Facebook? So my issue is not, I'm not butthurt. I'm sad that you guys used your relationship with him that way. And then, Mike Buklovich started tiffing with me, and he started posting a bunch of stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. So I blocked him too. But before I blocked him, he posted the very picture of me and Jack Hall that I had posted on my page at one point as a profile pic on my private page. He had joined my page at one point, and it was my profile pic on my private page. I wasn't using it on my political page. But he posted it as if to be snarky. And so I used it on my political page now because he posted it. He's friends with Jack. And so, and Jack's okay with him apparently posting all these other photos too. So, I mean, again, I get it. They don't go on Facebook. They don't go online. But, when people that you go on vacation with are harassing a citizen and posting pictures of you with them and saying they support you after that citizen has blocked them and that same citizen is supporting you as well, it definitely shows like something, I guess. I don't know. I don't care because, again, I blocked all those people and I've never been happier. I blocked Rebecca Hung. I blocked the Lunch Bunch. I blocked Aiden Fogel. I blocked Kathleen Byer. I blocked Mean Street News. I blocked Mike Buklovich. I blocked, I think I blocked Lupico. I blocked Tom Williams. Like, all these people that were bringing so much negativity into my life are just gone. And all these same people kept saying I was always wrong. They said I was wrong about these records that I got, but I've never lost. I beat the city of Lorain, got my record. I beat the county of Lorain, got my records. And again, every time it was just cost. No extra money, just cost every time. But the thing is typically we cover costs. But because your government keeps hiding stuff, I made them cover the cost. So in the grand scheme of things, that's where we're at with that. So there's your little history lesson there. Now let's look at what we've got going on again. So we discussed T, we discussed that. We can float over to, we discussed those posts. So again, I'm not going to discuss the Lunch Bunch thing again. I'm disappointed that they're still continuing this after I took everything down because they're trying to taunt me. And I think if anyone's learned anything in this history, that's not a good idea. All right, now let's roll over to. I was watching the Madhouse podcast today. Interesting podcast. You guys did a great job as usual. I like watching you. You always pose interesting questions. If you run for office, though, you'd be running against me and Angel. And just to correct you really quick, it's Antonio Baez, not Angel Baez. It's Angel Arroyo and Antonio Baez. Antonio Baez was our councilman, and the reason he's gone is me. And I know that they were asking that in the Mod House podcast, but yeah, it's me. I was on the phone again talking to the sheriff at the time, and I found it all. I wasn't the sheriff yet, but I found it all, and I wasn't going to sit on it. I mean, again, if I waited to report it until the sheriff was in office, January, and the election date was February, it would look like I did it to get him out so I wouldn't have a candidate to run against. And that wasn't my intention. So I wanted to do it as soon as possible so they could find a suitable replacement. So they found Angel and they put him in. Now, for Mod House guys, you asked some questions today, so I'd like to answer them. So, question number one, what happened? Yes, Antonio Baez had a full-time job as a police officer in Sheffield Lake. You asked some questions about why they can't be that. Well, here's some reasons why. Well, when you're a police officer and you're working in city council and you're voting on matters that involve your mayor or your or who also happens to be your APA salary, or when you are law enforcement, you can't be in partisan politics. And that's the problem. It's not law enforcement in general, it's classified employees. It's not about their honorable service to our government. It's about the fact that they are in our government, that it is their service to our government that prevents them from holding these positions as well in our government. Because in a sense, you're deciding you're in both positions at the same time. Now you would argue, well, in they have them in Sheffield Lake and they have them in Vermilion and some other areas. Well, those are actually they're not statutory cities. Like Lorain is Democrat Republican. Those aren't Democrat Republican. And it really is the D or the R. It's partisan politics. Because then at what point do you start pulling people over that are D or R? When do you let a D slide and an R not? Or when do you let an R slide and a D not? These are the questions that get asked. In Antonio's case, the problem was even larger because initially he would have been okay if he stayed part-time at Sheffield Lake. What happened was in Sheffield Lake, Rocky Radeth, who happens to be the APA of Lorain City, voted in the then already sworn in city councilman as a full-time police officer, Antonio Baez. So Antonio then signed the Sheffield Lake Civil Service Agreement that said he would not participate in government. Now, classified service agreement. Now, do you think the mayor and safety director who does that knew that? Do you think that the APA, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney of Lorain City, would know that? Do you think that a law enforcement officer, as all law enforcement officers know, they can't participate in partisan politics, would know that? Yes. So then the bigger question is, why did all these people that knew it not say anything? And why did they let him do it for a full year? So when you ask why can't he do it, it's because it's illegal. That's why. And it was illegal when he did it from February of last year on. And so, yes, he did it for a full year. He collected a paycheck. And now, as the Vermilion Daily or Lorain Daily, I think it was, pointed out, what's next? How do we address the fact that he voted on everything, including federal ARPA funds at the end of the year, that now should arguably be returned to the federal government because we did not vote to distribute them in a timely manner with a quorum that was acceptable? I mean, that's all his votes are invalid. He was not legally holding office. Let that sink in. No matter how nice the guy is, no matter how much you like him, he was not legally holding office, so all his votes are thereby illegal. I don't know what to tell you. So you have a city councilman, a Sheffield Lake police officer, and Antonio Baez, an Army reservist, former Marine. Well, Marines are never former. An aide to Marcy Kaptar, congresswoman. Yeah, this guy that's supposed to be in the know, who signed an agreement without reading it for the civil service of Sheffield Lake, and a cop that enforces laws and rules on you. And then in turn, I'm hearing from other sources that, we should probably request this file and see if he even was able to properly laterally transfer over. Because when it comes to law enforcement, you're supposed to be able to look at lateral transfers. They have to have a certain amount of time and another department as a full time. And I don't know that he had that. He was a part-time officer at Sheffield Lake, so I don't even know how that applies. But I know that Rocky Radiff, his boss, the mayor, is the one that suggested he be a police officer. The city council voted on it. You have it all on record. You have the date, the time, the stamp. Then 12 months later, or 3 months prior to that, I start sending emails saying, I see you guys are going to vote on some stuff. And I'm saying, like, Antonio, you can't be in office. He says, I've reassured multiple times that that there's this, that there's that I'm good. Well, you weren't, though. You weren't good. That's the problem. I begged you to call and write the ethics board, and you didn't. I begged you to ask the attorney general, and you refused. In the paper, they said Riley said he was investigating. They still haven't sent me that investigation. Because they know. Why would they investigate something they knew from the start? What, you want me to believe that a guy like Rocky Radiff, a mayor, and an assistant prosecuting attorney, a safety director, an intelligent man who reads things and does things, was so ignorant of the law that he didn't know any of these things existed? Come on, guys. Come on. Please. I mean, please. So I reported it for months, and then suddenly he decides to resign, and the paper put out personal reasons. Where'd you get that quote from? That's not what the one that was sent to the city council says. Angel Arroyo in the paper says personal reasons. Where'd you get that quote from? I mean, people yelled at me because they said, well, he would have known that. Well, I mean, he should have. It was on the agenda. I mean, before that came out, so before he wrote his story saying that he was personal reasons, before Arroyo was quoted saying that when he was sworn in, Guerin already had a copy of the resignation letter that he had got because it was announced. So they put the resignation letter out there in advance, and Guerin had it, and there in turn I had it. So why didn't Angel have it if he had already been nominated by the Democrats to fill that role? And if you want me to believe that, I don't know, maybe you should sell me some. Maybe you should sell me a bridge in Arizona. Okay, whatever. Just let that sink in. So, it is what it is when it comes to all that good stuff, too. But the bottom line is Antonio was holding that office illegally. He was voting on everything illegally, and everything he voted on after his first month in office was illegal. January was the only time he was legally able to hold that office. From February 13th or whatever day it was on, he was not able to hold the office. So no, Matt House, it wasn't your questions that sent him down the deep end, even though they were very, very well-placed, poignant questions that should and be asked and answered about the streets and the curbs. But that didn't scare him off. What scared him off was little Aaron. And then he promptly went into the Morning Journal and talked crap about me and compared me to Jim Carrey and me, myself, and Irene. Most likely while still sitting as a council person and while being a Sheffield Lake police officer. In a story that identified him as a Sheffield Lake police officer, he badmouthed me, a politician who had already signed up to run in his spot, which is another Hatch Act violation, which I didn't bother to report, but it is. So again, now we end up with this ethics violation because I call the ethics board because, that's what they make you do. They should have done. This is what I said with Petticourt, with all these people. Like, get your ethics violation in order, get it squared away, and ask them, like, not violation, but ask them. Send them a letter. They'll write you back. Can I do this? Yes or no? And they'll write you back a letter. They have lawyers that, if you take those classes that I took, that they come on there and they go, please, for God's sakes, call us if you have a question. That's what we're here for. They have 3 staff lawyers just there to answer ethical questions of government. But no one wants to pick that up. They'd rather go to the law department. So now I have to send this in where I have to explain why, even after I warned them 3 months in advance, Antonio Baez, Sheffield Lake police officer, Army reservist, former aide to Marcy Kaptar, an outstanding citizen, was led to believe that he had the right to continue to vote, even after being notified that he was illegally voting. And he voted not only on regular city funds and matters, but also on federal dollars being spent, thereby making this a matter for the Office of Special Counsel. And since his department receives federal funds, and the city of Lorain receives federal funds, and he receives federal funds, he's liable under the Office of Special Counsel. Now, I get a lot of you may not realize that, but I do. You know, when all those things come together, that's a perfect storm that could lead you down a perfect path of losing your career. And just remember, in October or November of last year, I sent you a message saying, for God's sakes, please don't vote on just this federal stuff. Recuse yourself, come up with an excuse, don't be there. But no, you just had to vote. And that's because they didn't have a quorum, folks. So they didn't have a quorum without him. So even if he didn't vote, they couldn't vote on those ARPA funds. They couldn't give his boss, Rocky Radiff, the mayor of Sheffield Lake, and APA of Lorain, a raise. And, you know, when you look at the guy in Elyria or whatever, where they were like, well, he's voting on his daughter's salary, and they ended up pushing that off anyway for the Muni Court. But I actually felt he had a right there, because the problem for Antonio isn't that, I mean, because, yeah, they're giving it to the whole department, but the law department of Lorain is very small. There's very few lawyers in that department. And if one of them is his boss, and one of them is the guy that got him the full-time job as a Sheffield Lake police officer, and then 1 year later, Antonio is returning the favor by voting on a pay raise to increase Rocky's overall salary with the city of Lorain, which, by the way, you guys still haven't provided me with those documents yet, so that I can send this off. That's part of the reason why I have it written, but they haven't provided me with the records that I've been requested to send in with it. And so the city is dinking around, probably trying to come up with something so they can cover up their malfeasance. But the problem is that you can't. The question comes down to, did Antonio vote on a salary increase from Rocky Radiff, the assistant prosecutor? Yes. Did Rocky Radiff, the assistant prosecutor, vote to give Antonio Baez a job as a full-time police officer? Yes. Those two things are not compatible. Did Antonio Baez vote on federal funds and thereby illegally because he did not have the ability to hold the office? Yes. Did he know that he shouldn't have held the office? If he didn't know, then he was just ignorant. That's the problem. That's ignorance of the law at its best. You signed documents. You signed the Sheffield Lake classified, employee documents. You understood it when you became a police officer. And if you didn't even understand it all then, you understood it when I explained it to you multiple times and emailed you multiple times and sent you multiple messages. And you still just did what you wanted to. So now you get to suffer the consequences. And so the next question they asked on that podcast was, why Angel? Well, it's because they didn't have anybody else. Because they ignored me all the way until February when he stepped down. Had they listened to me 3 months ago, they would have found a suitable candidate. I'm not saying that he's not, because I'm not trying to slander the man. I'm just saying, if you guys are asking why him, it's because he was the only person they could find, even though he lived an hour and 40 minutes away, that had property here and a house here that was in the 6th Ward that was a Democrat that they could get to run. It didn't like to have people lining up to run against me. So that's what they did. They on his Facebook, he had posted, I've been offered a unique opportunity. offered. They called him. He didn't decide. I guarantee you. I mean, this is my opinion, right? But from looking at what he posted before he got here, from knowing that he works outside the area over an hour and 37 minutes, knowing that he didn't quit that job, he still works there. So what, does he just live here on the weekends when he's here seeing his daughter? I mean, I'm curious. And how does that look? I mean, other people have asked me because I'm usually a font of knowledge. And to be honest, I don't know. I don't even know if it matters. I feel like if he has property and he's here and he's going to be here for the meetings, he has a vested interest here. Even if he has 2 properties, I don't see why that would matter. I feel like that doesn't matter. I know I took a lot of heat for defending him on the Lorain page because he's in recovery, and I defend people who are in recovery every single time. I have clients out there in this community. There's zero chance I'm going to badmouth that man for being in recovery. So when you ask, did he have all these bad things before? Yes. They've been talked about and posted. And when I try to defend him, I got blasted. They didn't even care what name was behind it. They didn't even care that it was opponent was the one doing it, saying, please, he's in recovery. They're more mad about the abuse stuff. From what I've read. But again, like I said, I was like, congratulations. I mean, before he became my council person, I wasn't going to say anything. But when they appointed him, I mean, I guess this is your chance to see what he's going to do. He's got less than a year left on the term that he has to fulfill. And on his first night, he was talking about cutting costs by consolidating the front station and the bailiff station. And then again, he was talking about streets. He talked about Fairless, but then he got it confused and said Homewood. And then he was talking about Tacoma, saying it looks, it's an emergency, it looks like a war zone. Yeah, him and Antonio both have said that a couple of times now, but I've been the one saying it for over 2 years. I've been saying it since Ray Carrion was in office. So again, that's why I'm here. And that's why he's here. He's here because they needed someone to run. He's a Democrat, and he lives here in this ward, apparently. No one else was jumping up to take the position, and no one even realized Antonio was going to resign. I mean, let's just point it out. Antonio resigned on the 5th, effective the 6th, and Arroyo announced his candidacy just before that. It wasn't planned. It was last minute because they truly believed that I was full of crap when it came to Baez. I wish I was. I like Baez. I really do. He served our country. He's a good guy. But these things don't excuse those things any more than any of this does. When we have a cop, no cop starts out looking to be, God, if you do, God help you. No cop starts out looking to be a horrible person and a horrible cop. They start out with great intentions, with all of the ideals that every cop should have. Slowly but surely, it gets us all in government and everything. That's why I say, honestly, term limits works, because you're not in there long enough to develop long-term allegiances. Like, I feel like at max, I shouldn't be in there more than 4 years. 2 and 2. If I hit that 4-year mark and we haven't finished, then someone needs to come take over. Because I'm not doing it for that long. I'm not doing it because I want it. I'm not trying to do it because I want it. I'm trying to do it because it needs to be done. And what I see you guys having in office right now is ineptitude. I mean, how else do you explain these budget crises? And for everyone blaming the mayor about the pay, council votes, we vote on that stuff. So when they brought Arroyo back, I was like, all right, cool. I'd better him than me at this point. Who would want to step into Antonio's shoes and have to fill in and figure out how you fix 12 months of votes that you voted on illegally? The questions that are going to be asked and answered. The fact that he had to know that unless they just didn't think people would remember. I wasn't there for that. I have nothing against the man. When you guys say, oh, he did this, he did that. All I know is the news stories that played from back then. Even the news guy at council that night leaned forward and was like, wasn't he the one that got trouble for like DUI or whatever, ODI? And I was like, yeah, like the other two people were like, yeah, that was the same guy. Was, oh. So, I mean, again, like, I didn't realize how passionately people felt about this. Woo-wee! Y'all were mad. And again, I'm in the business of forgiveness. Like, so when someone says, do you hate James? No, I don't hate anyone. There's enough people that hate people in this world. You guys may think I hate these people, but when I'm talking about these people and their official capacities, I'm not talking about them as human beings. If I see them in public, like when I go to the city council meetings and I see James, I don't yell at him from across the room. If I see him in public, I'm not going to run up to him and his family in front of his family and cuss him out. But in these forums, in these public forums where we're doing these battles, where they're meant to happen, yeah, all spare and love and war. You don't think they're going to do it to me when I get in office? They're already doing it to me. So you can't, like, but I don't have any feelings. Like, I'm like, oh, boo-hoo. You said I was gay. Oh, boo-hoo. You said I was pretty. Oh, boo-hoo. You said I get teeth whitening. They're not teeth whitening, they're implants. Oh, boo-hoo, whatever. Like, no, I don't. Guys, I just don't care. I know you think I do. I know Aiden says things like, oh, you're big, mad, big dog. No, I'm not. I'm mad at any of you. I think it's amusing. I look around at the clown show that is what it is. And yeah, maybe I am a little too pretty for that clown show. But I know that I'm looking around people with big glasses and people yelling and people screaming in public meetings, and I feel like that's illegal. So I'm sick of all of that stuff, and I'm going to get in there and we're going to hopefully do a change on that. I also wanted to talk about tonight is, give me 1 second, brain fart. Good night. I love you.
I know you gave me a kiss earlier.
I know. Sleep tight. I love your new hair. We'll go face the music tomorrow, okay?
Yeah. I think we're gonna suspend me.
I know. Just go. I love you. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Can I bring the dog water and the cat?
No, not right now. Sorry about that. What was that? I need to look at my Facebook real quick to see what the other thing was that we wanted to talk about. Facebook. No, I'm not gonna leave. We're gonna go here. ADHD. Sometimes you forget exactly what you're talking about. Yes, Ember. It does mean fire, and you will get burned. Don't play with fire. Fire. So while I'm sitting here cleaning my glasses, let's go back to the daily news. I want to remind you guys again, Vermilion Daily News, Lorain Daily News. They've been picking up a lot of the stories that I would cover. I'd really like you guys to start checking them out. Go to the Patreon, throw them a few bones. They write a lot of good stories for the city. You guys should really check them out on all of these pages and all these formats that they've been doing it. They have their own website. So check them out. Check them out today. Go subscribe. Throw them $5, whatever. Help out, support local news because they're supporting and producing nothing but local news. They're asking the questions that we want to have asked. They're talking about what's going on in these city council meetings and all these questions about all these different things. And so you guys should be very well aware of what they're doing and check out their stories. Now, we boiled down to certain other questions. Like one of them was, all right, so we were talking about all the First Amendment stuff, which, again, I wonder if I can put this into the chat. I don't know if I can. Here in the near future, I'm going to be getting into EHA Solutions, which is a county matter where they hired their. So they basically took the person that does. Oh yeah, I want to talk about the Mercy Health thing, and we're going to close out on that tonight. So that'll be the last portion of tonight's thing is the Mercy Health, James McCann, Mercy Health scenario. So, but EHA Solutions, basically the county hired their current consultants company to do stuff on. Yeah, that's EHS. So EHS. It says EHA in the title here on the PDF, unless I mistook it. Maybe they wrote it wrong in the PDF title, but it says EHA Solution in the PDF, Karen. But anyway, so the company is called either EHS or EHA Solutions. It's for they help with HR stuff, and this goes over when Tim White was working for the county, and basically he claimed that Mr. Riddell caused a hostile work environment. We settled. They brought this consultant in. The consultant's been working with the county, has had a contract since January that runs through May, and now the county, in their most recent meetings, discussed some weird situation where they had to bring her in as a temporary employee because she couldn't be a full-time employee, and it was the way they were doing it. And basically, that boils down to she still had a contract with the company, with the county, to do HR advice. So she can't also work as the HR director while having a contract in that. And so that's a complete conflict of interest. They totally screwed the pooch on that. They fought Garen tooth and nail when we asked about it. And when I got involved, they finally just gave it to us. So, for those of you out there that say, why do you have to act this way? Well, I mean, look what they do now. They just give me what I want. And that's the way it should be for all of you. It shouldn't just be because Aaron gets involved, but EHA Solutions is going to be a problem. It's unlawful interest in a contract, which could be considered a felony. So she has this previous relationship with the county, and that's what I was figuring the way they talked about it in the thing. Same thing when you look at Dan Petticourt. So Dan Petticourt's going to go from being our assistant prosecuting attorney to being just a regular old employee at I keep messing this up, Job and Family Services. So JFS, Job and Family Services. So Job and Family Services, he's a consultant there now, making $50 something an hour, and basically he used to be their lawyer, and so for a full year after, as he once was their lawyer, he can't be their employee. That definitely is revolving door or whatever they call it. So again, I just start seeing these things, and the more you look at it, the more you see the nepotism that continues to flow through the county and the city. You see people getting hires. I've asked Garen, he's already requested from the Board of Elections all of the donations from all of the people. And that's one of the things that I'm running on in the beginning is shutting down donations. I mean, again, why do we city council people who make $1,000 a month need, $10,000 in donations to run for an office for something that should be temporary? That should be something that you just do, as they said in the podcast today, part-time, not full-time. So, I mean, again, these are questions to be thinking about. These are people that have been on this, in some cases, for quite some time. You go look at my page, like I posted a bunch of stuff on the Facebook page about, Mary was in support of data centers for a very long time, and now suddenly they're talking about on the other page, like why, we shouldn't have these data centers or whatever. I think we should. There are power plants and water sources nearby. That's a great use of that land. So if Bradley's going to do it, good job for you, bro. Also, I think we need to be looking more at the marijuana industry. We also need to be looking at fighting that new bill that they're trying to pass to take away a lot of the home rule money. Right now, Lorain gets 36% taxes of all excise tax on all marijuana sold in the county or the city. Within our city limits, we have at least one. I don't know if Rise qualifies as one out there off of Northbridge Road or wherever it is, or Cooper Foster Parkway, I guess, as you're headed towards Amherst, if that's Amherst or Lorain. But I know the one Clutch with the drive-through over here is a Lorain one. So 36% of all of the taxes spent at Clutch go back into the city of Lorain. Now, while you may not like the connotations that go with marijuana, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a lot of money. So if you're going to spend some money on some marijuana, you should shop local too for that, because that's going to put money back into the coffers of the city. So if I were advocating for anything, buy your marijuana local. Don't buy it in like Elyria. Buy it, for the city and for the county, at least buy it in the county. But it's home rule, so it's city based. So whoever is buying it, selling it, and the city of Lorain will get that money. So I agree. I like the fact that they're thinking outside the box to bring in data, possibly bring in these data centers. So you're going to be mad about that? Be mad about it. So let's see what Mr. Petty has to say now. Why don't you just use the damn thing? Yeah. Of course I'm right. Please. This is who we were talking about. It's Elsie Hara Avil JD. She's obviously good at what she does. EHS is the name of the company that she works for, or actually owns and runs. It's her LLC. But she can't also be our HR director of Lorain County. And this kind of stuff that they do that gets them sued. When they talked about Brian Ames, they complained that, it's a cottage industry. What, holding you accountable? I think it's funny that you bleeped out the part where your attorney agreed with him. Yeah, you need to be held accountable. On one hand, you'll sit there and say, when Dan Pettycourt gives you a decision, then it's the decision of your counsel and you stick by it. But when your new counsel gives you a decision that goes against that and you have to give in to me, then you're going to talk crap. Then it's, oh, well, we don't really want to do this, and it sucks that we have to do this. But you created the scenario where you had to do it. And then you gave me a dumb video that I could have just done without. I literally, if you'd have just shown it to the sheriff and let him tell me that that's what was on it, I would have never even asked for it. But you guys forced the issue. You made me go to court. You made me get the lawyer. You wrote it in emails. Pettycourt wrote it in emails, and I have all of them. That's what you guys are all mad about. I'm anally retentive, and I save everything. All right, so we are at the 1 hour, 32-minute mark. We're going to finish with the last 28 minutes or so talking about the James McCann Mercy Health situation. So some emails have been shot out from the local news that they received from the national news, and it's fallen to me to possibly respond. And let's see what Garrett has to say on the matter. What's Mama got to say on the matter? I hear my tablet going off, so I don't know. I think everyone else coming in. But anyway, so here's the grand finale, folks. The grand finale is that if you look back at the scenario between me and James, he tried to force me to do something that I didn't want to do as a mental health professional. And when I told him we couldn't do this, he got mad and he retaliated against me. So in a recent picture, it says, he in no way basically he denied, any retaliation against Mercy Health. But that's his MO. Like a lot of the other stuff that I have on like with Baez, Miguel, with Middlebrooks, where he says things like, I'm old school. This is the same chief of police that called his records officer, Officer Galinas, Officer Galinas. Again, you guys love your homophobic insults here in Lorain. This is a guy that worked for him. James had to go get sensitivity training classes like less than a few years ago. And now, like, he's making more money than anyone else in the state. Yeah, man, like that guy's a rock star. Woo-wee! Anyway, so he does this stuff with me, and you guys have empowered him. And like, why wouldn't he feel this way? Yet we're asking for the warrant. We can't seem to get a hold of it. But from what, I know you guys at the news were able to interview the victim. I did a live video that night asking a lot of questions about it. Like, A, how did you come to the conclusion he had something up his butt? B, why were you doing a strip search on the guy if he hadn't already charged him other than anything with obstruction and that was it? Why was he in jail if it was just for obstruction, if you didn't have him for anything else? What probable cause did you have to believe that he had drugs and that's why you brought him into the jail? Then you go get your warrant and the police or the hospital denies it. Now, I put a ton of documentation up during that time as a medical professional and a mental health professional. All of us are well aware of these things, right? So those medical professionals, they're well aware. I'm a mental health professional. I learned this too. Like, I have to protect my clients. I have a due diligence to protect them. I have an ethical code. The doctors have, the Hippocratic oath, do no harm. So if you guys go and you look up all the information on drug smuggling, drug bags, stuff inside of people, all that stuff comes from the mouth down, right? Yes, we'll get to that. And so everything comes from the mouth down. It goes down the throat and into the stomach, and then through the stomach, and then into the intestines, the lower, the small, the large, and then out through the anus. And a lot of the issues with that is that while traversing the body cavity, there are plenty of issues of places for fails. The acid in the stomach, needs to be doubled by. They got to wrap it up in a few different balloons because the acid might eat through the balloons, and then you suddenly have this influx of cocaine or whatever drug it is inside their stomach, and a massive overdose happens. Same thing as it runs through the intestine. So one of the biggest fears is that as it goes through the large and lower intestine, it will become torn. I know this because I've done studies on this as a drug and alcohol counselor, like understanding the way that drugs are transported through inside of people, which is one of the most inefficient methodologies that they have, especially in light of newer, more modern smuggling methods. And so basically the study states that you use a certain type of drug, like a mineral oil or something, I forget what it was. You apply it, suppositories, that kind of stuff, and allow them to pass. And so that's the generalized treatment for this. I looked it up and I know a lot about it as well. And so the doctors did that. When they brought him in at first, they did the CAT scan as required, as asked. And they saw what looked like an obstruction. And again, it could have been poop. They gave the guy laxative, and when he pooped, nothing came out. Then when they came back with the second warrant and said, we want you to do this body cavity search, and they're like, look, we can't do this body cavity search because if he has something in there and we're going to try to pull it out and it bursts, then he could overdose and die. And so that's standard protocol. Like, I've looked up all the medical documentation I can find on it, peer-reviewed documentation. There's zero reason you should be rooting around inside someone's butthole when they have drugs in a balloon or plastic or anything like that inside of there. That's just not okay. And so the doctors are going to say no because, look, we already gave him the suppository or the laxative. He passed poop. Nothing's come out. We can't verify what's in it through this CAT scan. It just looks like a blockage. And so no matter what, you come back with another warrant, it's not going to change our situation. In the end, that guy walked out with a ticket for obstruction. No drugs were ever found. And this was over a 2-day period. How long do you think it takes to pass this stuff? So they're going to sell the drug aspect of it on the law and the city side. They're going to be like, this guy's a drug addict. He had drugs up his butt. It's a drug house. And undercover did it. As was pointed out to me just now, they ID'd the passenger. That's a Fourth Amendment violation. You don't have a right to ID the passenger, only the driver in a traffic stop. So, again, you guys made some failures. You made some issues. And then you got in a fight with the hospital when they didn't want to do it. Now, I know that James and Riley and crew will say that they didn't threaten the hospital. Okay. Maybe you didn't. Just like James says, those emails don't exist about Aaron Knapp that I wrote to Tim Weitzel. Those text messages don't exist that I wrote to Aaron Knapp or wrote to Tim Weitzel about Aaron Knapp. They don't exist. They just don't. But yet, I have them. So I'm supposed to believe James McCann, right? The guy that straight lied about emails existing and text messages because they might be incriminated against him. He wouldn't he wouldn't call and threaten someone with losing their job. Yeah, I know. I already said that at the beginning. He wasn't the one. And yes, they've now sealed the search warrant. Like I said in the beginning, we tried to get it. They won't give it to us. So those search warrants are sealed. They won't show it. Now it's part of active litigation, which arguably it shouldn't be sealed because it's no longer clears because the investigation portion of it's over. Now you're in the charging phase and the lawsuit phase. Like, unless you're actually doing an investigation in the matter, it shouldn't matter. But anyway, so here we are. You guys have now, in my opinion, done exactly what they said they did. So either we're to believe these Catholic doctors with doctors' licenses who have, really no reason to lie, because one way or the other, them revoking the police force is McCann's right. But I mean, it did seem very retaliatory. They say it happened. Are we going to believe these licensed doctors, these licensed medical professionals who we have no reason to believe are liars? Or are we going to believe James McCann, who I've already proven has lied? Are we going to believe Mr. Riley, who arguably has not always told the truth either? He can say he has, but I'm still waiting on him to return, with that investigation he did. I know other people that have said, like, he says he'll call you back, but he doesn't. He claims he's in, meetings or, whatnot, and then I'm gone, hang up on you, Rick. He doesn't want to talk to you. You guys say he's your law director. Well, that's because no one else runs. Like, and again, he's also part of the crew that decided not to charge a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and he also is part of the crew that decided to charge Garen Petty. So again, am I supposed to believe him? What reason do I have to believe these people? I'm not saying they're liars. I'm just saying that when you tell me you're going to do something, I hold you accountable to it. To me, that's a promise. To me, that's giving your word as a man. I've said since day one, all James has to do is shake my hand and we walk away from this whole thing. As far as that stuff goes back to then. But do I believe this happened with Mercy? Yes, I do. And I believe this has been a consistent pattern on the behalf of Lorain Police. James uses his power to wield it as authority against anyone and everyone. The reports are there. Multiple people have said it. So many people are scared of him. If I'm being led to believe that the call about my daughter the other day was just a courtesy call, right? So, I mean, again, just keep this in mind. If someone calls in a child abuse or child abuse type report, it remains confidential. So if I get a call from a police officer saying that nothing happened and that they investigated and nothing happened, guess what I would never know is that nothing happened. CPS would never call me to say anything if they investigated it and found it unfounded. There'd be no report. It would just be unfounded. It might be a little blurb that someone called. But to call me the supposed perpetrator up and say, hey, just to let you know there was a call about you, but in good faith, like, we investigated, we found out nothing happened, but you involved both SROs. You stated that. You stated that the complaint came from the school. So, I mean, again, you gave me way more information than you should have. And then you told me you weren't going to do anything. And then you made a very big point of telling me that the chief chose not to do anything. Well, I said, well, the chief wouldn't have a choice in that anyway, because at this point, he can't make any decisions in regards to me because he needs to recuse himself, as it's a conflict of interest at this point. But, again, as I've said, like, I don't know what a warning looks like. You want to come after her, come after her. There's plenty of documentation to show why these things happen and what's going on with my daughter. So let's leave our kids out of it. Let's not play that game. I mean, your kid came to my page. He didn't have to. Most of you people come to my page and you don't have to. But that being said, this whole thing, so now you've got medical professionals saying, no, we're not going to do this. You've got a sealed set of warrants. You've got the city that's now going to clam up because they claim that they're in active litigation. You've got a church that's not going to, a hospital that's not going to say anything. All the while, they disbanded that police force. Now, if there were problems in that police force, great. We go back to optics. We go back to what vacation photos look like optically, what timing looks like. You don't freaking can the police force right after you had a big fight with them and threaten, all this stuff. And do I believe you threatened them? Yeah, I do. Because you've said it to me in emails. Filing a false complaint against a police officer can lead to this, this, and this. So do I believe that you would have said to a doctor, if you don't do this, this might happen? And again, you'll use the word might just like I'll use the word it was a question. But when it's coming from a police chief in a badge and a uniform with the full weight of Lorain police behind him, who's going back a second time to get a judge to give another warrant, even after the suspect has been there for 2 days and pooped out stuff and nothing's come out, and there's no evidence that there's any drugs in there. And again, as a substance use disorder counselor, I will say this. I've done the research. Look it up, folks. He's not, look, all right, so let's just say that he came out of that drug house, right? And he had something in his butt. So what you're insinuating is not, he didn't swallow it, right? You're insinuating he came out with a baggie, like a Ziploc baggie of drugs or a balloon that had some white sticking out of it. He bent over, right? And he put it in like that. That's what we're saying. So now it's in. He's literally taken his fingers and he's shoved this up his own butt, right? And then you go do the strip search and you see just, the hedgehog peeking out. Like he's got something honking for the right of way. That's what you saw? I just feel like the story's hocus pocus, right? It's all magic. It's all smoke show and mirrors. You saw a guy coming out of a drug house. You couldn't get any drugs on him. You pulled them over. Maybe it's a drug house. Maybe it's not. Maybe they went there to do drugs. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're just homies with the guys. Who knows? Whatever the scenario was. You pulled them over as you do as part of the pit crew because you had this unidentified people that identified them. And then, you're dealing with, what if it was toilet paper that was on his, whatever. And so you decide that the best course of action is to force the medical professionals in this county, city, and community to do your job for you. We are not police officers. As a mental health professional, I may work with you, but I don't work for you. And there was a lot of misunderstanding of that in the courts and in the probation department as well. I heard that a lot from people in this community. Why are you siding with those people? With those people? You mean the client? That's our responsibility. We don't hold a responsibility to you, the individual law enforcement officer. We owe a obligation to our patients and to our ethical codes and our Hippocratic oaths and whatever it may be that we swear to. So what we ended up with was this whole scenario where the doctors did what they were told to do. They checked with their legal counsel, and apparently the police just kept coming back and going to the courts. They got their warrants, and then again, all in the end, what happened was that guy walked out with an obstruction charge. To my knowledge, there's never been any drugs found, charged, anything. And yet, shortly thereafter, Mr. McCann disbanded the Mercy Health Police Force. Coincidence? Maybe. I can't say that that's the case, but it happened right after. Nothing else other than optics, you shouldn't have had it happen that way. You should have waited. And if you had reasons other than that, and you had them all listed and you had them documented, all these other things that you're saying that these people did at that police force, which I don't doubt. But if you have all of that, then you should be able to document that, wait a couple of weeks, and then provide it. But now you have these people that went to school for years that don't want to lose their license or their practicing ability to practice. But yet, I'm supposed to believe you, Mr. McCann. And again, I have his personnel files, Mr. 1.66 GPA. I just feel like when you look at that compared to these doctors, with doctors, they're doctors. They have a medical professional's license. They've gone to school for, forever. They make super good money. I mean, they're probably the only people in Lorain that make more money than James. Why would they lie? I mean, again, why would I lie or even care about the Hildreth situation? But when you look at, is Lorain police and Chief McCann vindictive enough to do something? Well, he took my job and then he lied about it. He tried to take the Hildreth kids' freedom, but well, actually, he didn't, because in the grand scheme, he had nothing to do with that in the beginning. But during the investigation portion, when he went after the mom, like, this was all about the kids in the beginning, but in the end, he got the obstruction charge against the mom and punished the mom for standing up to the officers. Don't stand up to us was the message that was being sent. Okay, fine. She pled guilty because whatever. She didn't want to fight the good fight anymore. That's neither here nor there. But that doesn't mean we put the kid stuff online. The kid never pled guilty to anything, so why is his information online? Children not subject to a crime. Children pictures subject to, not subject to anything. Like, these just shouldn't be online. And yet he did it. And they're still up to this day, and they're sponsored through the Lorain police site, where he's punishing children. And it's retaliatory in nature. You say it's not, but it is. And again, we the citizens are allowed to be vindictive, so to speak, but you, the police, are not. And so when he does so under guise of color of law, that's the problem. And so, yes, in recent emails I sent out caused a few ruffled feathers because I said promised investigations. Yes, I feel like if you run on a campaign of we're going to fix corruption, and the guy that's been advocating for you all along says, hey, this is corrupt and here's the report, and you say, I'll look into it, that's promised to look into it. I'm not saying that, you said you're going to prosecute anybody, but we've got to look into this stuff, folks. So now you have another instance of what I think is a modus operandi of showing this man coming after medical professionals in Lorain County who don't want to do his bidding. I am not going to do their bidding. I will work with them. I will help them. I will help the people of Lorain. But I'm not going to do what I'm told just because some cop went and got some judge to tell him what they thought was best. In the end, they told me at the courts in the county that I should stop saying what I was saying. At the courts in the county, they said that what I was doing wasn't authorized under a guardian ad litem status, and what I said was wrong. And in the end, I was right. And I had to go all the way to the highest portion of the state to prove I was right. So what do you think these doctors are going to do? They're going to fight, and they have way better lawyers than Lorain does, and they're going to win, and we're going to pay out. And again, it goes right back to somebody being a bully, and all you have to do is look no further than every other story about him. So NBC News, you want to figure this out? Just Google this police chief. Look at my page. Look at all the stuff I posted about him. Look at the retaliatory acts he took against his own officers, against Officer Miguel Baez, against Officer Middlebrooks, against Officer Galinas, who he called Gaylinus. He's homophobic. He's had to go to, trainings to become more sensitive to his officers' needs. Yet after going to sensitivity training, he still tells Officer Middlebrooks, an officer of color, that he speaks to everyone this way and that he's just got an old school style of doing things and that everyone else accepts it, so he needs to too. That's documented. Middlebrooks filed an EEOC complaint. He lodged 2 complaints with the department prior to that are still floating around the city that I can't get access to. But sure, he's not retaliatory. Watkins went up against him for the police chief's test. Now Watkins doesn't work for us anymore. I mean, again, I get it. Miguel spoke out against the wrong people, so you guys got rid of him. That's what Miguel Baez's mistake was. Middlebrooks, he didn't like being pushed around. And from the feeling I get, the people around here in the law enforcement community didn't feel the need to stand up for him. So you guys are like back to blue until what? Till not? And then screw the blue? Don't you find that ironic that I'm defending Baez and Middlebrooks cops when you say I hate cops? I find it ironic that you say Tia says that I'm Jack Bradley's, female dog. And in reality, like, I've sent so many emails to him that he would laugh in your face if you even suggested that we were friendly. So again, guys, when you look at this stuff, I looked up all the laws on it. If you really want to get in detail, we've got like 6 minutes left of us. I'm not going to, but I'm going to say things like this. If you go look up the stuff that I put out, it all clearly states that removing drug bags from people's anuses, intestines, small intestines, large intestines, the risk to the patient is way more than the reward of removing it. So, in the grand scheme of things, if you had probable cause to hold him, you would have. You can't put this on the hospital. And they have a Hippocratic oath and they have a requirement. So maybe we would believe that you didn't try to bully them and didn't retaliate if you hadn't always been doing that. But you've retaliated against everyone. Aaron Knapp, social worker. Miguel Baez, police officer. Corey Middlebrooks, captain, police officer. I've heard other stories. I can't speak on those other ones, but those other names are strong. A lot of them have gone over to Sheffield Lake, which I find amusing. There are a lot of stories out there about a lot of people. I'd like to go up and look up the story about a certain captain who runs the department HR division, or not HR, but like everything now, who made certain claims against my friend Garen. There's a story floating around about Cinderella and the ball. And so basically the story goes that a certain officer had a habit of doing things back in the day when they were just brand new officer, and something happened and that officer flipped his car, did something, there was an accident, and then he got out of his car and he ran home, and then he reported something happening, and then this officer at the time, I guess the description was this larger African American officer that had I don't know if he had like a mustache or something, but they said he showed up and that officer was there, who's now a high ranking officer in Lorain police. And he was like trying to sell it that someone had taken his car, and the officer knew what was up, right? He knew he'd probably been out drinking and or something, and something had happened with the car or whatever. So the officer's response was, well, looks like Cinderella left something behind, i.e. the car. So it does depend who you are in these scenarios on whether you get off, on whether you're, a regular citizen or you're an important person. But I do believe when you look at this scenario with Mercy Health, you'll see that what reason would Mercy Health have to lie? And why are we forcing this? Drugs are crimes of moral turpitude anyway. And while, yes, I agree we want to get them off the streets, from a harm reduction standpoint, removing drug baggies from people's anuses against their wishes and willingness, all while violating the Hippocratic Oath, all while violating every piece of medical evidence that says that this kind of stuff is dangerous, and there's only one real way to do it. You do it that way with like a glycol or something like that they give you, like a type of laxative that clears you out, being careful not to give something that's going to eat through the plastic, while avoiding having the bag tear by shifting inside the small or the large intestine, or surgically remove it. And the risks always outweigh the rewards when surgically removing it, unless it's already burst or prone to burst, or there's a blockage that everything else is blocking up behind it. So that's that. That's what you're looking at with this thing with the Mercy Health and the drug stuff, from a licensed drug and alcohol counselor standpoint, and having reviewed peer reviewed case documentation in regards to the medical field on removing and taking out drugs through the body. And the way this happens is I couldn't find one case. Now, maybe, again, you guys in law enforcement have access to other cases than me. I couldn't find one case where someone was shoving it up their butt that way, to store it, right? Maybe to get rid of it in a beep, but it's almost always gulp, right? So if it's coming out, it didn't get inserted in during the time that he was in the drug house. If it was peeking out of his butthole, that means it had to have gone through his digestive tract. So it had been at least 24 hours or more since he had ingested it, which would make no sense if you're doing your little research. Now, then you look at the fact that the doctor, one of the doctors you're charging, also has sons in law enforcement. So he raised a couple of law enforcement officers, but his word's not good enough. And a lot of the people in this county and city know this guy, Dr. Palmer. So his word's not good enough. You got two doctors and the hospital director's words against the chief and the law director. Now, I do agree that whatever they're saying about the law director is probably not correct, because Riley's not going to. If you're saying Riley said anything, I wouldn't believe that, because I don't think he responds to anyone. He'd have to actually pick up the phone or respond to an email. So I don't think he did anything. But do I believe that James is the kind of guy that would say, well, the law department, or I consulted with the law department, or maybe he did consult with them, but James is the one relaying it? And how James relays it is not how Riley would relay it, because Riley's a lawyer and James has a 1.66 GPA while he was in high school. And I'm not really sure what his, I mean, I've seen his college stuff. It's not an amazing read, trust me. And so I don't think he has the capability of translating Riley speak to other people. And so in those moments, do I think there was perception? Do I think that the doctors took it a certain way and James took it a certain way? Absolutely. But the main story of all this boils down to that you have the problem, and will always have the problem, that the doctors are not police officers. They're not required to follow your orders. And if you issue a court order that legally you can't enforce, then you can't. You couldn't enforce this. You couldn't make the doctors do this. It would be like, well, we made you a warrant that said inject this guy with sodium, pentothal, or inject this guy with an air bubble and kill him. Well, you can't make me do that. That's against my ethical code. I'll sooner go to jail, just like I won't give up my sources. So, I mean, again, folks, like, you're asking doctors to do things that are impossible. On top of which they have their religious objections, which, again, I'm not, I've got my Bibles over there, my Quran, and my Holy Bible, and I read them. But I'm not a superly, huge religious guy. But I will say this, like, if they have religious objections, then perhaps you should have listened to them. And we all know that in the United States, those religious objections often tend to override a lot of things. You're dealing with a religious hospital, so why is it so hard to believe that they would have religious objections to rooting around inside someone's anal orifices? I'm just saying, like, I mean, what? Just 2 fingers? Jesus, doc, take your ring off. Is that a Super Bowl ring? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, the guy didn't want someone rooting around up there. I want you guys out there, all you men out there, to just take this. We'll go on this note. How many of you get your prostate checked? Ladies, you should probably look at your men right now if you're watching. I know there's only 6 people watching, but like, if you don't go get your prostate checked because you don't want someone rooting around in your a-hole. And I know most of us guys don't want someone rooting around in there. Most ladies don't want someone rooting around in there, although as guys, we're always trying to. And so the thing is that that's like exit only for most people when it comes to that, if that's their thing. Like, it's not about sex, it's about a fear of having that area penetrated by anything. And so I look at it that way. Like, guys will not go get prostate exams because they don't want to get this thing run upside them, and it just becomes this mental health thing. Like, I'm not going to let that happen. The guy said in his interview, I just didn't feel comfortable letting him do that. Like, I let him, they CT scan me. I mean, again, that should have been enough. So you look at the process. The hospital did everything they were supposed to do. They followed the procedure the way they were supposed to follow it. And in the grand scheme of things, they got bullied. And I do believe they got bullied. I have no reason to believe otherwise, because that's what they've done all along. James McCann has been a bully since day one. And why would he change? That tactic has worked for him. You better not, or I will do this. And that's been what's happening since day one. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. What did you want me to say about him, Garen? Like, that he had a hand in it? I mean, like, yeah, Levesque is all over this too. I mean, all these people have incestuous relationships with Sheffield Lake, with each other. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know. Was it Levesque that said it, not Riley? I don't know. I mean, whatever happened in that story, all I can say is that there was a lot of missteps on the part of the city, and the fact that we compounded it by going after Mercy, and even if that wasn't the case, the timing of it was really crappy. I can't think of a worse way to do that and a time to do that. And so, even if I'm to believe that it had nothing to do with your fight with the Mercy Health, even if I'm to believe that you dissolved a multiple year long engagement and agreement with this hospital to allow them to have their own police force, and you suddenly decided you didn't want them to have it anymore, even if I'm to believe you'd been doing a long term investigation into that police force and you found malfeasance in office or things that they had done wrong or they weren't a good police force or too many complaints and you were going to remove it for that. Even if I'm to believe all of that, you could have waited a couple of weeks. Even if you didn't mean it to be retaliatory, it looked that way, thereby giving the air of retaliation. And that's all you need for it to serve your purposes. That's all you've ever needed to serve your purposes. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. I know that there's another one on this channel, but I got this new microphone because everybody said they could have trouble hearing me. So I'm hoping that you guys heard me okay tonight. We're going to start doing this a little bit more. I'm going to start putting stuff out. I think I did a good job. I don't think don't think there was any really bad cursing tonight. I tried to keep my tone even. So, feel free to critique in the comment sections afterwards, but I tried to give you guys a solid, straight podcast tonight of information that we need that didn't have too much, of my opinionated slant to it. But in the grand scheme of things, these are all just opinions. I'm just going over the facts as I see them. Just the facts, man. Just the facts. And so I just want you guys to know that it's not as bad as it may always seem. Sometimes it looks bad because we're breaking some eggs to make this omelet, to make this cake, whatever you want to look at it as, right? And rules have to be followed no matter who you are, and you can't just do the things you've been doing in the past anymore. So I will be reaching out to the NBC News guy and kind of giving him some stuff, but I'll probably send him this because this last portion of this podcast pretty much covers my feelings on this Mercy Health scenario. And now when you read the news story from NBC, and why wouldn't McCann or the city want to give some sort of an explanation? You did in the beginning. Well, now you're going to just clam up because, again, in the public eye, you look bad. Optics, people, optics. That's all this is ever about, like optics. And so I'm just going to say this again. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I'll look forward to seeing you in the elections. I really hope that all of you the independents that think you're Republicans, will go out and just vote on that May 6th day. Yeah. In order to vote and register as a Republican, if you are one. If you're an independent, then you're an independent. I'm going to be looking forward to doing this more often. These types of podcasts, try to schedule them in advance. I'll try to start looking for topics. My next topic I think is going to be on this youth shelter that they want to open here in Lorain, because I really do want to talk more about that. It's something that I recently was reached out to by the person who's taking care of it, and I really think she has something good to provide the city of Lorain, and I think we need to be open to the idea that it's possible for them to do this. Like, we need to have this stuff happen. So again, folks, at some point where there's smoke, there's fire. I can't prove that he retaliated, but I can show as a reasonable individual, like law enforcement would, multiple instances where it looks like he did what would be considered retaliation by the average Joe, the everyday person, or even, what would the average officer see? And so that's where you start dealing with these scenarios where you have the same thing. What would a normal person see, think, or do in these situations? And so if you look at these different scenarios and they look like retaliatory acts against people, like, moving Miguel Baez from SRO and the position he held for, a decade or more, and then moving him into night shift. Like, that doesn't seem like a reward for an officer with longevity. It seems like a punishment. You demoted Middlebrooks when he started making complaints, and you dug up, you made up stuff and said he had poor productivity. So all of this guy who rose up in the ranks to become a captain suddenly is not capable of doing anything. That's not retaliation. A social worker makes complaints against a couple of officers, and then complains about your First Amendment stuff, and then calls you out in emails and makes fun of the fact that you use your Coast Guard logo still on your Lorain Police email, and then you start copying his logo and say "Make it a wonderful day" at the bottom of your emails, trying to be funny. And throughout this whole process, you've continued to do what you've done, and I'm not supposed to believe that you would retaliate. Put on pajamas, please. I'm not supposed to believe any of this. I'm supposed to just believe that you're a great guy that everyone says you are, that you deserve $238,000 a year. You deserve to be the highest paid person in the entire state of state of Ohio, just about. That you deserve all of this after having just barely gone to college and gotten low GPA. I'm not even sure you finished your AA. I think you got a law enforcement certificate or an AA and something, but you deserve all of this. Oh, while your officers and the people of Lorain are making so much less. So again, folks, if you want to keep going down this path, then continue to do this. But sooner or later, the money train has to stop. Sooner or later, the chief of police making $234,000, the fire chief making $220,000, and the superintendent making $190,000 a year have to recognize that you guys are $200,000 civil servants in $2 town. We don't have that kind of money. You want that money? Go work in Columbus. You want to be part of our community and work here? Then give us a break. How about you cut your salaries in half? Show the community that you respect us. Show the community that you want to serve us and that you want to be public servants. Do you deserve to get paid? Sure. So is there any one of you out there that believes that you couldn't live off $160,000, $150,000 a year in Lorain? Any one of you that believes that James McCann needs $234,000 a year to live in the city of Lorain or even Amherst? I mean, that's a lot of money, folks. A lot of money. So just look around you. When you've got a town full of people that are barely making, the ends meet, that have to think about what they buy at the grocery store. What he makes means he never thinks about what he buys, ever. He goes to the grocery store, he buys whatever he wants. He does whatever he wants. He goes wherever he wants. He has whatever vacation he wants. He's living on the high hog, on our dime. And sure, crime's gone down a little bit. But when you guys look at your crime rates, you're talking about, it went down 20%. Well, when you only had 10 people that committed the crime, and now you only have 8, well, yeah, that's not a statistic. These are skewed results. You need to do something more beefy if you want to make that comparison. Simply comparing it to last year does nothing. You need to look at the historical facts. You need to do all this data. But in the grand scheme of things, from the numbers I see, Lorain isn't as crime-ridden as you would have it be. Are there crimes and criminal elements? Yes. But not East Cleveland. I mean, you want $234,000 a year. I think you should give that to any cop that's willing to work the East Cleveland beats. Like the beat cops, not the chief. Any crazy ass that's willing to go out into Cleveland, East Cleveland, and work the streets, give that guy that kind of money. Even spread that extra $100,000 out amongst your officers. I mean, imagine that. If we didn't pay him $234,000 last year, we could have paid for another police officer to patrol our streets. He makes more than the sheriff. He makes more than a lot of people. It's ridiculous. So keep that in mind, folks. That's where your tax dollars are going. And now Mercy Health, the one hospital in our town, we're gonna start a war with them. Good call. This is a case, once again, of James McCann's mouth getting the better of him. His ego writing checks his ass can't cash, right? That's all this is. Do I believe he said those things? Yes. Can I prove it? No. But everything about me that I've seen from him says that that's the case. And when you look in the overall picture, what would an average person think? Yeah, I think it happened that way. So when you look at Mercy Health, I think you have to question, what's more important to us is, keeping the people that keep us alive more important, like in Mercy Health, or keeping James McCann happy. We're not talking about the thin blue line here. We're not talking about your rank and file police officers. We're talking about your chief of police, the administrative guy. So, anyway, people, thanks for tuning in tonight. This has been the initial production of the LCPU podcast. I'm Aaron Knapp, aka once before, the artist formerly known as George Patton, reminding all of you out there to law enforcement to be lawful, not awful. Maybe you should follow the advice of my shirt sometimes and nut up or shut up. But I will say this much. For those of you out there disparaging my name, for those of you out there calling me names, just know you just fuel my hate fire. It doesn't bother me one bit. It's not even really hate fire. I'm just trying to quote a movie, but it doesn't bother me. So keep up your good work, slandering my good name with your name calling. All you do when you call me homosexual and then post up in that very same forum, let's all wear Arroyo shirts to the city council meeting. All you do is cast that disparaging situation onto my opponent. When you go around making homophobic slurs and then supporting my opponent, it looks like you are that. So again, good job. You're doing more for my campaign than anyone else could, Tia, Aiden, and Deb. And I've got all of you blocked, and I don't see any of it. And again, even for the Lunch Bunch page, I don't see that. It's blocked. I wouldn't see it. Someone sent me a picture of it. But again, all of you are blocked. You cause me zero stress. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm running for office, and I'm going to keep running for office until that in November, and I'm not going to worry about the rest of the stuff. And if you choose to put me in that position, I'm going to do the work. So thank you guys. You make it a wonderful night. It's been a pleasure.